Chapter 7, Tape 1, Part 2, March 16th, 1965, On the March. Only 43 more miles to go. Services were being held in the First Baptist Church for Jimmy Lee Jackson, shot dead by a state trooper in nearby Marion, Alabama. The trooper shot the 26-year-old after breaking up a freedom demonstration. The ceremony created a determination to complete the march to Montgomery. It was time to rest. There was hot coffee to drink and chicken sandwiches to eat. We were soldiers on the nod. Much of the tension was lifted, and the fear dissipated. I knew that if I closed my eyes, I would sink into the bliss of a deep sleep. One night in jail and walking more than 7 miles in the Alabama sun had created the need for rest, but I wanted to finish just one more tape. Leroy was working with the transportation people, and he didn't sleep in the tent. He took his naps in automobiles. That's where I found him, and even though he needed to rest as much as I did, he seemed to welcome the company. Leroy, I asked, how did you get so involved with the movement? What were you doing before Dr. King came to Selma? He smiled and nodded his head. It all happened so natural. I didn't have to plan it. My brother was working at this here Jet Drive-In in Selma, and he burned his hand pretty bad, so I got the job filling in for him, washing dishes and helping around. People then were just starting to talk about integration and all that, about integrating the schools, but we were still scared. We wanted to do things, but we were nervous about it. We started talking about what it would be like to go to the white parish high school instead of R.B. Hudson. When I got this job at the drive-in, I was always laughing and fooling, me. Well, the white girls that was working with me, the car ops, they used to fool with me. They used to play tricks on me, and sometimes I would get back at them by hiding their trays or something. Anyhow, we was all fooling. One day, someone hollered, "Hey, Leroy, look out here." I look out in the parking lot, and I see all these people getting out of cars, and I thought that the circus had come to town, because at first I really thought they was clowns. And I ran out laughing and all. Then they call out to the manager, and I could see that they're the Klan. I wasn't really scared. Well, I've been more scared at other times. But I did get nervous, and I hear one of them Klansmen tell the manager that I better leave them white girls alone, else they're going to come and see me again. I had to quit that job. Then on 4th of July, we all went to the movies, and I guess there was about 15 of us. We paid our money, and we went and sat in the white section. We stayed there for about an hour, a whole hour, and everything was all right. Then the white boys started hollering, "Hey, we smell niggers in here. They in here somewhere." All of a sudden, the lights come on, and the sheriff, Jim Clark, he come in, and he starts beating on us and dragging us out. After that, everything really changed, because the kids kept talking about it and about other things that we can do. That was it, you see. It was the kids all the time doing things. Even after SNCC and SCLC and all them came to town, the grown-ups still afraid and telling us they're going to whoop us if we get into that mess. But to tell the truth, even they was always talking about how we sat in the white section at the movies. In Selma, that's all you did. After church on Sunday afternoon, you went to the movies. So everybody always wondering if we're gonna do it again. The owner, he was worried because he don't want no trouble to keep peoples away. He make lots of money on Sunday from the Negro kids. The public accommodations bill was already passed, but in Selma, the whites make believe they never heard of it. All the drugstores had lunch counters, and when we would go and sit in and try and get served, they'd drag us out, beat on us, and take us to jail. That's the way the whites in Selma's was. I guess lots of them still that way, but the peoples aren't scared no more. You asked me a question. Now let me ask you. How come you here? I see these white people down here, and I can hardly believe it. Ain't you afraid of losing your job? Leroy, I never remember making the decision to come to Selma. Just as you said, it just seemed that it was the natural thing for me to do. I remember when I told one of my friends at the television station where I worked that I was going to Selma to join the march. He said, "Dave, are you crazy? How can you do that to your family?" I said, "Do what? For Christ's sakes, I can't stand working in this damn place one more day." I had actually made the decision to get actively involved sometime before that. Jackie Robinson was at the TV station on a promotion tour for Chock full of Nuts coffee, and I arranged for his interview on one of my shows. Then I took him around in some of the supermarkets. Well, he and I sat in my car for a long time before his train came. He was going back to New York City. We had a great rapport. I liked the man. We talked about America and its race problem. He told me why he supported Richard Nixon instead of Kennedy. It was, of course, because of that one issue. He didn't trust Kennedy. He told me that he and Floyd Patterson were flying down to Birmingham, and I asked him if I could go on the same plane. He said he could find out and call me back, but then I found out that I couldn't go because I had to tape a show that day. Later, I went down by myself to see what was happening and to find out if there was any way that I could be of some help. My return flight got back early in the morning, and I just had time to go home and change and rush to the office because I had a big meeting scheduled for that day. I still had the visions of the police dogs and the fire hoses in my brain. I walked into my office, and the secretary gave me the material that I needed, and I went straight to the conference room. The meeting was just about to start, and advertising executives from New York were there, along with food brokers and account executives from the company. The television sales manager was just starting to make his speech. Now, fellows, there's no reason why, with the advertising dollars that are being spent here, we cannot make Alpo dog food the #1 selling dog food in the market. Leroy, it all seemed very silly and unreal to me at the time. I have a dog, and she loves Alpo, but I just couldn't focus on it. To hell with it, I said. I'll get another job. Chapter 8. President Johnson told his cabinet that all racial discrimination by federal agencies must stop. He said that federal agencies in Selma, Alabama had discriminated against Negroes. 4 men were arraigned for the murder of Reverend Reed. They were Namano Neil Hogle, his brother William Hogle, Elmer L. Cook, and R.B. Kelly. Tape 2, Part 3. Still the first day. Still 43 miles to go. Leroy, you said that the adults were too scared to do anything at first. Did you feel alone? When did it all start to come together? One day, the kids all decided that they were going to march downtown. They didn't care what their parents say, especially after Dr. King had come to town and stopped at the oldest hotel in town, and some white fool walk up and slap him. You know all the kids loved Dr. King, and so they was all ready to go downtown. We really wanted to march. Not just the kids from Hudson High, but all the kids. My little brother was just in kindergarten. He said that he wanted to march for freedom. One time he'd get in the march, and the police took him out and brought him home to my mother. I remember one little girl, she was in high school, and she was kind of small for her age. She was such a cute little girl. One time the police was talking to us, and one of the police tried to help her on the bus. But she'd jerk her arm away, and she'd say, "I don't need no help from you." All the kids cheered and laughed. That little girl shows she's not afraid of that policeman. It made us all feel good. That's how it was after they slapped Dr. King. We weren't afraid no more. We just wanted to keep going downtown. Some of the parents were mad because they had to come and get the kids out of jail, and they was mad because we were missing school and all that. Sometimes the parents would get their kids out, and they'd be back on the same day. That's how it was. Nothing else mattered. We wanted to go downtown. The teachers used to say, "Now you stay in school and you don't go downtown." But soon they wanted to go too. One time a whole lot of teachers decided they're going to march downtown, and all the kids was really excited because we felt that they should lead us, not stay back. That day all the kids was meeting at Brown Chapel and forming at Clark School, and the teachers told us to stay there. They were going to go downtown and register people to vote. We waited, and when we heard that they had a bad time, we decided that if they ain't back by 4 in the afternoon, we're going to go join them. The whole Hudson High, and lots of little kids too, we was all ready to go. We formed a line, and we was just leaving here when here come the teachers. We all cheered and started singing and followed them into the church to hear what happened. And that's how it was. No one was scared no more. And we knew that we was going to keep going downtown, no matter what. I will remember that day for the rest of my life. We all stayed there and sang and clapped and cheered the speeches. We knew then we were together. We didn't go back to school for a long time. I had another job then. I was working after school at the Bamboo Dinner Club, And the owner, Mr. Lippman, he used to pick me up at the high school every day. He's always saying, "Now you ain't listening to that rabble-rouser." He means Dr. King. "You ain't listening to that troublemaker. You stay in school. Don't you get yourself in that mess. You got a job. You keep it. Them troublemakers ain't gonna have nothing." Freedom Monday was the time that the teachers marched. Mr. Lippman came to get me out of jail. The police told him that I had set off a firecracker, and they arrest me. So in the car, he keeps saying, "You sure you ain't in that mess? The sheriff say he saw you marching. You better not be in that mess." The last day of the week, I drove a SCLC car to work, and my boss say, "Where the hell did you get that car?" I told him that it ain't stolen, and don't worry about it. Well, just after that, I get arrested, and the police say, "Leroy, Mr. Lippman coming to get you." I was surprised myself when I started laughing and tearing off all them buttons that I had down my pant legs and on my jacket. You know them buttons that say Freedom Now and SCLC and all that. I almost wish that I left them on, because when you get to the restaurant, he'd say, "Leroy, you fired." I was mad because I wondered why he'd take me all the way over there, and then I got to walk back. So I'd say, "No, I ain't, because I quit." And then I walk out right through the restaurant and right out the front door. He was so mad that I thought he was going to grab me. All the people's looking at me and one say, "What this nigger doing walking out the front door?" Then somebody yell, "Someday somebody going to get you and they're going to beat the shit out of you." I just keep walking. Tape 2, Part 1. The second day, in a station wagon just outside of Sardis, Alabama. Mrs. Viola Gregg Liuzzo, age 38, was thinking about her 5 children left in her husband's care as she headed out to join the Freedom Marchers. She was talking about her children and the donations that she brought from her husband's union, local in Detroit. Viola was employed at Sinai Hospital at home, and she mentioned that she was attending Wayne State University to get her degree in medicine. An FBI report later described her as a brilliant student. FBI files. "Leroy, please tell me more about how you first got involved. I mean, with the organized movement. What happened after Dr. King came to town?" "Well, Bernard Lafayette, he was the first one that I met. I think that's so. They brought him down from Chicago because he worked with the peoples there. He was real good. I know that he's nonviolent, but he is as brave a man as you ever want to meet. I know that things in Chicago are a lot rougher than they is here, and we all have a lot of respect for him. I remember he was walking around with his pipe in his mouth all the time, and he talked so fast that sometimes I can't understand him. One time Bernard said to me, 'Hey, Lee Moten, you want to go over to Lowndes County with me?' At the time, I didn't know where it was, but when he say Haynesville, then I know. That's the county seat, and black people's living there like old-fashioned slaves. Bernard wanted to go there and see if we could get some peoples to register to vote. It was raining, and we parked the car and walked on them muddy dirt roads in the Negro section for a while, and we talked to a few people, but then we come to this little store. Most of the peoples that could see us wouldn't come out and talk to us because they were afraid. I couldn't blame them. We talked to this guy in the store who was supposed to be a local leader. He was a minister. We talked to him about getting people from his congregation to come out and register. He was saying, 'Yes, I agree with you,' but you could see that he was afraid. Again, I say I don't blame him. Lots of Negroes was killed in this county for doing less. It's a small community, and whites know everybody and owns all the property. The Negroes all work for them. SNCC was already starting their Black Panther Party here, and the peoples were all worried. They had their church all boarded up so no bombs could be thrown in them. We rode around the county for a while, but we didn't accomplish much. Folks would nod their heads, and they would say they was with us, but if they saw any whites around, they would pretend like they didn't even know us. Some white boys come around in a pickup truck and pull alongside and yell, 'These are niggers. You leave 'em alone. You go on back to Selma.' We went up to this here school up on a hill in Thomaston, Alabama, and the principal tell us to go away and not bring any trouble. We finally say to hell with you, and we went back to Selma. So I walked around the next few days with Bernard Lafayette, and he's telling me what it's like to work for SCLC. He was telling everybody that the kids in Selma was beautiful, and that this was the place to start a real movement. I guess in the city, You had all them gangs fighting amongst themselves all the time. Here, we didn't have any of that. We all just wanted to do the same thing. We wanted to register peoples and march for freedom. So we could go downtown and go into stores and movies and all that, just like everybody else. And we wanted to make it possible for a Negro to run for office without getting beat on the head for trying. I told Bernard that just a little while before he came down to Selma, the Klan would ride through our town, blowing their car horns and yelling at us. The kids used to get scared, but now the kids holler back at the Klan and laugh at how silly they look with them sheets on their heads. I remember one girl, she yelled, "We know you need them sheets to cover your ugliness." Bernard, he laughed. One day we was talking and we walked into a staff meeting and I went in with them. They was having a meeting and somebody say to me, "This meeting for staff only." I didn't hear him because I thought I was talking to a student from our school. I think it was a girl. It usually be. Anyhow, I turned and someone say again, "I told you this meeting for staff only." I said, "Well, I'm staff." And the man say, "Let me see your staff card." Well, I didn't have any. But Andrew Mosette, he know I've been working, so he say, he's staff. And I sit down. And I've been CLC staff ever since. Everybody was always talking about how wonderful the kids in Selma were. And at that meeting, they were saying how they was going to help the kids. Somebody asked, "Who's going to go out to the school and help us direct and organize the kids?" So I say, "I'll go." I don't mention that I'm already doing it. Then somebody from out of town say, "Do you think you can get the kids out of Hudson High School?" I didn't want to embarrass them by saying that they already been out, so I just nodded my head. The next day we went to the Lutheran school. I think that it was a combination of a high school and a college. Anyhow, we didn't get nobody from there to come out and join us, so we went to Selma University. But the kids there all say they have exams and that they can't miss school or they won't be able to graduate. We went up to Tipton, and a lot of kids there lived in Selma, so they came into town. But for others at Tipton, it was hard because it was a county school. Some of the kids was from rural areas, and they would say, "Yeah, I go into Selma and across that bridge, and when I come back, some white man going to throw me in the river." I say, "Don't worry about that." The principal finally run us off. A couple of days later, Hosea Williams, he asked me what I can do about getting kids out. He was always teasing me. He say, "Hey, Leroy, what can you do? You walking around here with that big leather coat. You staff now. You got to earn some money." So I say, "Well, I can do anything you want me to do." "Well," he say, "go out and get some peoples to march. We got to get some action around here. It's getting too quiet." I got one of the guys that had a panel truck. We called it the bus, but it was really only a truck. And we planned to go to Hayes and Harris School. There was a boy there named Lawrence Carter who had been in marches with us. He was 18, and he had a driver's license. We planned to meet him at Brown Chapel the next morning. We stopped at the church first, and just as we was getting ready to leave, here come this white man, and he asked, "You Leroy Moton?" I thought, oh man, what's this now? This man for sure from the Justice Department. I know he's FBI, and he's going to arrest me. You ever know that lots of people thought that you were a spy, David? You wear them expensive brand new jeans and denim jacket. When I heard you say that they told you over at staff to find me, to take you over to the bank, I was so relieved. I remember that I told you I couldn't go because I was going up to Hayes and Harris to get the kids out to march. And Lawrence say to me, after we get out in the truck, "What'd you tell that white man that for?" I said, "If staff send him, he must be okay." I had a laugh, though, because I pointed to Miss Sweetness. That's what I called her. And I told her that she would take you over. I know I didn't make any points with her when I done that. She wanted to come and march with us. Tape 2, Part 3. The proposed voting rights bill in the U.S. Congress would make it a criminal offense to interfere with anyone's right to vote. Demonstrators marching out of Brown's Chapel were stopped by the police, so they sat down in the road. FBI files. Leroy, I suppose that you heard about what happened to me when I tried to go to the bank. Yeah, everybody loves Sweetness, but she should have waited for a car to carry you over there. She told me that white car that came over there was the one that ride around here with the swastika on the side. Well, I won't do that again. Tell me how you got all those kids to march yesterday. That was really exciting. We was just determined that we was going to get them kids out of that school. Some kids say they was afraid. I say, look here, the police whoop us. They can't whoop us no harder than our own parents whoop us sometimes. Lawrence, he laugh and he say, look here, Leroy. My parents never clubbed my legs the way those police do. We all laugh, but I say, we gotta do this. Peoples all over the world is watching Selma now, and we gotta show everybody that we're not afraid. It was about 10 o'clock, and the principal, he already called the police. He told us that they were coming, and that we better leave. We just say, never mind the old Uncle Tom. We're gonna march anyway. He'd throw us out of that school, and we climb back in the windows. Some kids say, wait till school is out. I told them that we're gonna go now before the police get us. Then we decided to do like we done at Hudson High. We all wait until the bells ring. Then instead of going to our next class, we all march out. A lot of kids was afraid because, as I said, they live far away, and how they gonna get home? I told them not to worry about it. We'll get them home. Then the police come and park their cars down the road. That scares some of the kids. But I told them, come on, they're gonna arrest us. They're gonna arrest us all. About 10:30 or 11, we start marching down Highway 22. The police and the state troopers, they follow us. Some of the kids want to stop at the stores, but I told them not to. The whites that own the stores might tell the police that we tried to steal something, like they do sometimes, and the police just wait and arrest some of the staff that way. I told them, listen here, I want to march, not go to jail. I want to march right into Selma. It was about 2 o'clock when we came into Selma singing, just as loud as we could, and I get the thrill of my life when Sweetness rush out and hug me. We singing as loud as we could, ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. And then when we get to the police barricades, we sing, we shall overcome. Peoples all rush out of their houses, and they join in the singing and the clapping. I tell you, all them kids was saying to the grown-ups, see, we ain't afraid. We would sing the loudest when we got to the police lines. Some peoples would get so excited they would cry. I could see them crying and hugging when we marched right into Brown Chapel for a meeting. There were so many people by that time that we had to have 2 meetings. One at the Baptist church. We kept singing and clapping, and whenever one of the speakers would say, we on our way now, and we ain't going back, then everybody would cheer. One speaker say, we're going to turn Governor Wallace around, and we all start cheering so loud the whole place shook. It started raining that night, and it was hard to get the kids back. We had one guy, a minister, who used to have one of them Sunday morning radio programs. Well, he had a station wagon, but he said he wouldn't carry the kids back home. One time when the police asked him to carry some kids off to jail, he say, okay, and he'd bring a whole bunch of kids off to jail for the sheriff. Imagine that. I mean, he was a Negro. That's how almost all them ministers and people was like that. He also had a store, a barbecue pit and all. We started to go there and crowd up the place. We wouldn't buy nothing. We just fill up his store. We wanted to give him a gentle lesson, but it was no use. He was just so afraid of the man, you know, old Jim Clark. Finally, we got one of them church buses, and there was this young kid driving it. Some of the kids was from Tipton High, and they lived way out on the farms, and he drove the bus off the road because he couldn't see so good in the rain, and we got stuck. We were scared in the dark woods, and some of us started to walk to find help. We found this man living in a small shack out there. He told us, well, I don't have a tractor, but the white man I work for do. If he finds that I took it, I'll lose my job, but that's okay. I ain't gonna let you people sit out there in them woods all night. Your parents must be worried. We went back to the bus, and sure enough, he come a little while later with that tractor, and he pulled us out. We didn't have but $5, and we tried to give it to him, but he come on the bus, and he told all the kids that he didn't care if he loses his job or not, because all his kids is grown and gone, and he gonna get nothing but money to pay the rent back to the white man that owned the land anyhow. He say, you young people doing the right thing. We was too scared to do anything, but you people's gonna change things, and it will all be for the better, for you and for your children. He wouldn't take the money. Instead, he say thanks to us for letting him do something for the movement. Oh, it made us all feel so good. That man have to go all the way back into them woods alone, and I never know whether he lose his job or not. But he was a grown man, and he told us all we was doing the right thing, and everybody started to laugh and fool around again. Tape 3, Part 1. The Reverend Lorenzo Harrison was fired from his church by the Board of Deacons after white men told the board to get this nigger out of town or he will be killed. The Reverend tried to register voters in Lowndes County, Alabama. Leroy, I can feel the tension building. I know that there must have been a lot of scary moments for you. How do you account for I was going to say the lack of fear, but I think I should say the ability to control the fear? Well, look at here. You here, right? Yes. You scared? Much of the time. Me too, but we're doing it because we know it's right. We gotta do it. The first time that we try and cross that bridge, Hosea told me, Leroy, you keep the women on the inside and keep everybody singing and moving ahead and keep watching me. I was back with the second group. About 100 people's way up ahead of me. Then I hear the trooper say, go back. Tell your people to all go back. Then I do what John Lewis and Hosea tell me to do. I tell everybody to kneel down. There was this girl named Rosemary next to me, and I tell her, hold on tight. I told her, never mind them troopers. Getting the gas guns out. We're going to stay. I tried, but when the gas started to explode, I stayed down as long as I could. I guess that was about 3 or 4 seconds. I knew that they had started beating them up front, and everybody started to run. I tried to keep people in line so the police couldn't get at everybody, but they was all running, and Hosea and them up front was trying to help John Lewis and Miss Boynton because they'd been beaten bad. I started to run. Rosemary, she yelled, Leroy, wait on me. I grab her hand and try and hold on, but she running too fast. One of them posse men say to me, hey, nigger, you want to march? I look up and I know he recognized me from the restaurant where I used to work, and he swing his club at me, but I duck and run. I saw a whole bunch of them beating on a man standing on the bridge. He wasn't even with the march. He was just walking across the damn bridge. After the state trooper sent us back across the bridge, the local police took over. The sheriff's posse was on horses. They had deputized a lot of local white businessmen, giving them a hard hat and a club, and here they was beating on us. The next day, they expect you to come into their store and spend your money. SCLC and SNCC staff had to force some people to go to the hospital. As bad as they were hurt, they was too afraid to go to the hospital. They were afraid that the police would come right into the hospital. You know, it was a Negro hospital, and they don't care. When we went back to the church, a few of the police come right up to the church, and they try and beat on some people. The kids that come down from the north start throwing bricks and rocks. A few of the police cars got the windows broke. Good thing none of the newspapermen print that. It might have started riots in other places. It wasn't any of the local kids. It was kids that had come down from the north that was throwing the bricks. We stopped them, and we brought them into the church. The police was getting their guns ready, and if they had an excuse or the chance, they would have shot us all because there was so much hate that day. All the beatings and the gas, that was everywhere. People were crazy, and them cops would have shot them kids. I do believe that. Well, everybody was coughing and crying from the gas and laying on the floor in the church. People was all trying to wash the gas out of their eyes, but they was all ready to go back and try it again. Most folks say, we got to go back across that bridge now. All the television guys were taking pictures of people being beat and everything. Now that's what's going to work against the man. Because every time they do something like that, we get stronger. They kill Reeb, more people's come down to Selma. They beat on us, and they almost killed John Lewis and Miss Boynton. More people come from up north. They say, let's go to Selma. Even lots of local whites were disgusted with the police. It helps us a lot because we knew what we had accomplished then. When all those people started coming down here, we found out that people did care. That was the important thing. Whites were coming down from the north, living in Negro homes. Movie stars was coming down. One famous movie star, Gary Merrill, he come down and he asked staff, what can I do? And he even go on the cleanup detail. Jim Lethbridge come down, and he only have one leg. He say he gonna march to Montgomery for freedom. People's here say, look at here, this white man got just one leg, and he say he gonna march. If he can do that, I'm gonna march too, and nobody gonna hang back no more. That's what the man and his violence done for us. You know, Dave, I don't think that it was the telegrams that Dr. King sent out as much as seeing them things on television that made most of the peoples come to Selma and join the march. It was also beautiful. Everybody was singing songs together like We Shall Overcome and I Love Everybody. We was having them big rallies in the church, singing and listening to speeches by Dr. King and Farmer and Hosea. It was beautiful. Chapter 9. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Interview with Mrs. Fannie Lee Washburn. Mrs. Washburn told Mrs. Liuzzo to be careful while she's in Selma because she knew from personal experience that a lot of innocent persons in the South had been killed. She further advised Mrs. Liuzzo that women in this area were in as much danger as the men. 32965, FBI file number 44-1245. By now, even the old people were getting excited because nobody could believe that it was all real. I remember when somebody at the meeting in Brown's Chapel said that we should all take a moment and thank Father Olette, who was so brave and helped us so much when the press got here, and he risked so much. Everybody cheered. It was really hard for the old folks to believe. White people's bringing them big checks from labor unions and ministers bringing donations from the churches. I don't know where you was, but I was kind of walking around in a daze, afraid that I was going to wake up and find out I was in jail and just dreaming it all, because that's what I used to think about in jail, how he's going to get all these people together and beat the man. Some senators and congressmen sent messages that they for us. Senator Douglas's wife come all the way down to Selma, and on the day of the march, she walk right out there and take her place in the front of the line alongside them beautiful nuns and Dr. King. Then everybody know Wilson Baker, Clark, Colonel Lingo, and all the Klansmen can't stop this thing. It was just beautiful. We were having meetings, trying to set up some kind of organization for housing for all the peoples that was coming in. We try to police the housing project and the church because we know that all the news guys ain't exactly with us. And some of them, and Governor Wallace's men, want to get pictures of Negro guys and white girls sleeping together. We want to explain to all those, especially from the North, that this is all too important and we can't have nothing like that going on. We tell them that if they want a mess like that, they better go home. Diane Bevel was in charge of transportation. So many peoples was coming down with cars, and Hosea asked me if I can accept the responsibility to help her with the cars. I say, sure. So they tell me, if people's come in with cars, have them sign their cars in. Make out a slip so you'll know where the keys are and the owners are at all times. Be sure you do not have anybody but staff driving their cars without estate plates, because the whites in town will know for sure that they are here for the march, and it could be very dangerous. The police was arresting our drivers for anything that they could think of to arrest them for. They was just harassing them all, and if they couldn't find nothing wrong, they just impound the car and put the driver in jail. They was arresting our drivers, bringing peoples in from the airport for everything from reckless driving to driving too slow when somebody would slow down because a trooper was behind them. I was staying at the transportation office 24 hours a day. I used to sneak out the back of the church and get some sleep in the back of one of the cars. I had to be very careful about parking the cars and having all the right papers in place, because if you didn't have the registration, the police would hold you and charge you with driving a stolen car. They did that to one of our drivers when the owner forgot to bring the registration. She had it in her purse. We had to search all over for her before we could get our driver out. That's how I first met Mrs. Liuzzo. She came down by car, and she turned it into transport. She signed all the releases, and she said we could use it. But to be careful, because she just had some work done on it. I just parked it, and I didn't let nobody drive it. After the march had started, she was going back and forth to the march with other peoples. One morning, when I was just catching some sleep in her car, because it was big and it had lots of room, she come up with 3 other ladies. They tap on the window and they say they want me to carry them out to the march. I say, okay. And I take them all out to the march. We got there just as the march was leaving. I left them all and I went back to transport office in Selma. I was doing that all through the march. I didn't make that march at all. I was just carrying peoples back and forth, making sure that if anybody needed safe transportation out to the airport or any place else, we'd have cars gassed up and ready to go with drivers. One day, one of the drivers got arrested in Haynesville, and somebody say, hey, Leroy, you got to go get him out. I ain't been to Haynesville since Bernard and I been there, and I ain't anxious to go back. So I had to get 3 people from staff to go. It just wasn't safe to go alone. Chapter 10. With my eyes set on freedom. March 20th, 1965. The city of Selma filed a $100,000 lawsuit against Martin Luther King for expenses for policing demonstrations. As tired as I was after the first day of the march, I had to take the time to tape a description of the end of the first day of marching. I said my security partner and I had just finished securing the area for the first campsite when we heard the call, "Here come the marchers." FBI men sat in autos parked along the route. Federal marshals peered from the windows of their cars. The state militia, with bayonets drawn, lined the road. And the regular army troops checked the road ahead. Through it all marched a small, ragtag conglomeration of humanity, the likes of which have never before been seen. Intellectuals and illiterates, business suits and dirty denims, men and women, young and old, agnostics and priests, nuns and rabbis, black and white, ambled along behind one lone American flag down that road in Alabama, and I wasn't one bit ashamed of the tears that flowed down my cheeks. I applauded that beautiful mass of love coming down that hill, and I knew that this army could never be defeated. For to defeat them, one must destroy all of humanity. The priest coming towards me flashed his searchlight in my face for an instant, then bounced the light up and down as a sign of recognition and greeting. "Hey, Dave, where have you been? We were looking for you all over before the march started. When we went up to see the bishop, I thought you were going to go with us." The only name we had for this very committed, pleasant man was Father John. We all just called him John at first, because that's how he introduced himself, but I later learned that he was a priest on leave from his station in Japan. Without asking anyone for permission, he donned civilian clothes and rushed to Selma to join the march. "I was told that the troopers wouldn't let you all out," I said. "I was also told that a smaller group would have to go, so I went to a meeting at Brown Chapel. After that, I went to a demonstration at the mayor's house. We all got arrested, and I was held overnight in the rec hall. I got out just in time for a meeting of the security guards. Then I got my security guard assignment, boarded a truck to go and inspect the first campsites. I hurried back because I wanted to be in the first group that marched across the bridge. Got back here to post guards and help secure the area. To tell you the truth, Father John, I can't keep up with these young people. I'm about to drop. Tell me about your day. How did you make out with the bishop?" I hate to even talk about it. Sometimes the church can be so frustrating. Here these kids are singing, "I love everybody," and all they're talking about is love, and my bishop tells me that I'm an embarrassment to the church by being here. He says that all the sisters and priests that are here should go home. Can you tell me how being here could possibly embarrass the church? Or how those beacons of compassion in their clean habits can be embarrassing the church? "Don't let it throw you, Father," laughed a young snick worker, warming his hands over our fire and sticking his pinky finger into his afro haircut. "I understand that the Episcopalians get even worse treatment from their bishop. You guys make me laugh. The church in the South has always been segregated, as has the church in the North. It's run here and supported by segregationists. And you expect the bishop to say, okay, to hell with all the parishioners who support the church with their money and take a stand for integration? Come on. That makes as much sense as me going to Governor Wallace and saying, I want you to enforce all the public accommodation laws because they are the laws of the land. What the hell are we doing here anyway? We're trying to register voters to vote when the law of the land said they had that right years ago. So we can all go home. I could be in bed with my wife. Father, you know that the church has preached brotherhood and practiced segregation for centuries. Now you want some old man to say the church is wrong? The church has been guilty. Hell, that's all foolishness. I really had to laugh the other day when that redneck stood in front of his church and said to the people who were trying to integrate it, this is our church, and we don't want any niggers in here. Tell me something, Father. You're a learned man who studied theology. What makes those people think that they are religious? If you are going to stay down here, you naive clergymen better learn that you are not going to change a thing by preaching. You go and try and preach brotherhood to some redneck, and they're liable to do to you like they do to Reverend Reed. I wonder what the church is going to do to help that poor man's family. The young priest turned and stared into the fire. I decided to change the subject. Isn't this some scene, man? I said. It reminds me of an old John Wayne movie. Look out there. We are surrounded by campfires of the National Guard, and we're huddled around our campfires like Washington's army at Valley Forge. It's like the young man said. It all seems so silly. A little while ago, I had to speak to the colonel of the National Guard because his men were stealing our wood. They were tearing down farmers' fences and sneaking right in here to steal the bridges that we made so our trucks wouldn't get stuck in the mud. You know what he said? I didn't wait for an answer. I started to laugh. He said, "These are Bama boys, and they ain't used to this kind of cold." That's all he said. I guess he's going to let them keep stealing anything that will burn. I kind of feel sorry for them. They don't have the big heated tents like we do. I never thought that it could get so cold this early in Alabama. They tell me it's only 14 degrees. "Hey, security guard," someone shouted at that moment. "Here they comes again." 4 members of the guard were walking around a large pond near our campsite carrying wood. "Hey, you guys," I shouted. "You're supposed to stay on the other side of the pond." "Nigger," came the reply. "The next time I go near that pond, it'll be to drown you." The young snick worker laughed out loud and shouted back, "Keep marching, boys. Now that the president has activated you, I hear they're going to send you to Vietnam to fight for free elections for the Vietnamese." "Dave," said Father John, "this young man is absolutely right. I was silly to go to the bishop and ask for support. And this whole thing does seem like a Hollywood farce. I mean, maybe John Wayne isn't in it, but is Charlie Chaplin? Look around you. The National Guard, state troopers, the U.S. Army. This is America. And what's this all about? So some citizens can vote?" But as the young man just said, the law of the land told them that they could do that years ago. "Father," I said, "I can remember some young black students risking their lives going around in a white neighborhood when I was a child. They were trying to get people to sign a petition calling for anti-lynch legislation. I remember when they came to our house in New Jersey, and my father said, 'What? You mean it isn't against the law to lynch somebody in this country?' I was only 12, but I remember rolling on the floor laughing." 5 days later, a tired group of marchers, sometimes as many as 3,000, arrived in Montgomery. Those that made the entire march proudly wore their orange jackets, signifying that they were veterans of the entire 50 miles. We were a euphoric group of happy warriors, confident that we had won. We listened to Dr. King address the crowd on the steps heading to the state capitol building. We hugged each other and congratulated each other. When I heard of the murder of Viola Liuzzo, I knew that we had only won one very small battle. Chapter 11. When my ship was decommissioned after the Great War against fascism, some of my shipmates and I went to a local bar and promised each other we would get together again at least once a year. After all, when you spend so much time together with a common goal under trying circumstances, you do become family. When it all ends abruptly, there's a strange feeling of wonderment. What happens now, you ask yourself? Will we ever have to do this again? Will I ever really see my buddies again? Will the world leaders now create the new world with peace and justice for all as they promised? Oh yes, I think everyone thought so then. I never really expected to see my shipmates again, just as I never expected to see Leroy Moten again. Nor did I ever expect to leave my family and risk my neck again for what we all thought had been accomplished long ago. The Mississippi March, June 1966. From nonviolence to violence and back again. Memphis, Tennessee. Centenary Methodist Church, June 5, 1966. There were many tears on the cheeks of those in a small group gathered at the Centenary Methodist Church in Memphis, Tennessee, as they sang, "This May Be the Last Time." It was a song dedicated to Medgar Evers, who was shot down in front of his house in Jackson, Mississippi. It was in Memphis, Tennessee, June of 1966, that Leroy and I had another chance to meet and talk. The new march through Mississippi was about to begin. And this gathering had no similarity with the coming together in Selma. Attitudinal changes, missed opportunities, disappointment, and anger replaced the joyous expressions of faith that was pronounced in Selma. Even Leroy had changed. This wasn't surprising, given that he was unfortunate enough to witness the brutal slaying of Viola Liuzzo. He was then subjected to the outrageous trial that was held for the killers and made into a national figure by the media. I was waiting for a ride to my host's house when I saw Leroy standing in front of the entrance to Centenary Methodist Church, where the headquarters for the Mississippi March Coordinators was being set up. We embraced, shook hands, talked of old times, trying to lift each other's spirits, but we both knew that the great victory celebration in Montgomery did not mean that the war was over. Leroy reminded me that one of his favorite songs that we sang on the Selma March was "Keep Your Eyes on the Prize." And that's what we gotta do here, he said. I waited just 20 minutes before the sleek blue Cadillac picked me up at the main entrance and whisked me through the city and into a secluded cluster of new, above-average income homes. It was after 10 o'clock in the evening, but the area was well lit, and it was easy to see that there were no poor people living in this section of Memphis. The driver, who had hardly spoken during the drive, quickly explained that he lived about 3 blocks from our destination and that this was the home of my host. The car that we were riding in and the lovely home that we stopped in front of was owned by a minister, who my driver explained was away on an emergency, and I was told would meet me in the morning. As I was shown to my spacious room with an adjoining bath and shower, I couldn't help but draw the comparison with my arrival in Selma and the happy few days that I spent with the Bonners. That inversion was to permeate my mind during the entire march through Mississippi. The warm, cascading water that came through an extra-large showerhead seemed to penetrate the very marrow of my tired bones, and I felt drugged as I crawled under the silky comforter. I dropped off immediately into a deep sleep. The very strong aroma of bacon and coffee pulled me like a magnet into the neat modern kitchen at about 7 a.m. My host, wearing black and white floppy slippers and a black shimmering robe with a white sash, lifted both ends of his narrow mustache at me as he smiled his greeting. His quick introduction to me rang with a sort of practiced New England twang. It was too fast for me to register permanently his name once he got past the reverend part. "Did you sleep well?" he asked. "Very well, thank you." "Well, I didn't know if I should wake you or not. I left a note for my wife to take you into town, but if you want to have some breakfast with me, we can ride in together." "That would be fine," I answered, looking at the kitchen window, out at the lovely surroundings etched in the morning sunlight. "It's so beautiful here," I said. I knew that I should not have asked the next question, but I couldn't get my mind that was prepared for Selma to adjust, so I asked, "Are there many Negroes living in this neighborhood?" I know that you were saying what a stupid thing to say, but I come from a segregated community up north. A local clergyman and I had felt the wrath of the people in our community when we made it possible for the first black family to move in. I was there in Memphis to join the Mississippi March and perhaps risk my life for freedom and justice, but the black man seated in front of me sure as hell didn't need me. His reaction to my question still burns off my notepad. I remember going upstairs and writing it all down, gnashing my teeth and laughing at the same time. He raised his eyes, not to look at me, but past me. "You know," he said, "they tell me that with my light skin, even white people can't tell when I blush." Well, I'm probably blushing right now, because I'm embarrassed for you. Did you expect to come to Memphis and find all Negro people living in shacks? All of my neighbors are Negro. Negroes in Memphis are probably better off than anywhere else in the world. Lots of new industry has come to our city, and if a man wants to work, whether he's black or white, he can make a good, honest living here. We have no problems here. We have Negro teachers, policemen, merchants, and politicians. I'm not saying that we can't use a lesson in brotherhood once in a while, but I do not agree with those who are always bent on finding trouble, whether it exists or not. You take that Meredith fellow. Now, why would anybody want to call attention to himself that way and go out and challenge people? He was a fool. He was lucky that he only got wounded and not shot to death. Imagine trying to walk through Mississippi that way. All he has done to make trouble for others who are trying to lead a happy life. With the aid of God, they can. If they have any sense, they'll go where things are better, not stay and beat their heads. and bodies against the second-grade mentalities of Mississippi rednecks. I felt very uncomfortable. It was obvious that my host who was feeding me was not at all in sympathy with my purpose for being there. Are you suggesting that all black people leave the state of Mississippi? No, of course not. But you would be surprised how many have come across the line to live and work in Memphis. Some even live here and go back during the day to chop cotton and work in the fields. I would also like to say that all Negroes are not black. I am not black, no matter what Stokely Carmichael says. I heard you mention that black people of Mississippi. Now you are talking about a minority of Negro people. I am not white, nor am I black. I am a man. I am a brown man, and so I shall teach my children.